Well, hello beautiful people, and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we are talking about yet another funding opportunity that is currently available that you can make use of to actually fund your business. This is in relation to the National Arts Council. I am Thandisa Mai, and I talk all things relating to business, making money, and the family life. This is actually a new funding call from the National Arts Council. It is more focused around the Presidential Stimulus Program, basically the Presidential Employment Stimulus Program that is called PESP5. It is actually focused on providing support and assistance to entrepreneurs and businesses within the arts space. I want to emphasize right from the beginning that there is a time frame to this fund, because some of the funds that I put out do not have restrictions in terms of time. This fund is specifically going to be closing on the 21st of June. This means that if your application has not been submitted by the end of the 21st of June, you will not be in the running, you will not be considered, right? One important thing that I also want to mention here is you need to adhere to all the requirements. I have another video right here on YouTube that is actually very much generic, talking about funding readiness. It's important that you go to that video, listen to the video, and prepare your business in advance so that when funding calls like this one actually come out, you are prepared, you are ready to just make sure that you complete the application forms and you submit the attachments and the documents that are required, and you are good to go. They have also indicated that by the 27th of September 2024, the outcomes of the funding will have been received, because this is another question that I get asked a lot and it's so difficult to respond to. But this fund has actually been very clear to say that by the 27th of September, outcomes will have been furnished to anyone who has been able to apply and is successful. So at least this gives you an idea of the time frame. And whenever I put out funding opportunities that are related to government, I always say this because it is advantageous for people. It's an opportunity. Actually, there are a lot of people that are going to take the opportunity. That means there are a lot of funding applications to go through from the processing side internally at the National Arts Council. So you need to be accommodative of that, and hence it is not easy to come up with outcomes like as quick, because there are so many applications to process. But they have indicated that by the 27th of September or around the 27th of September, the outcomes for those successful applications that have been received will be communicated. Now, let us get into what is the fund all about and what are the objectives. It's important for you to understand this so that you can be able to do an internal check within your business or within your program to see if you meet the requirements, or the project that you want to execute using the fund can actually meet the requirements, can actually meet the objectives, so that when the National Arts Council receives your application, you are at an advantageous point because you have actually you're trying to respond to the aims and objectives that they're trying to achieve. So this fund is actually more of a government initiative that was created to provide support to programs that will actually give or translate to employment creation within the artist space, creatives space, cultural workers space, heritage space. And this has been because of the impact of COVID-19 within that area. So that is, the fundamental objective of the fund itself. So it's looking for anyone within these spaces that I've just mentioned that can be able to come up with a project that will be able to respond to employment creation, like basically respond to one of the national crises of this country, which is job opportunities that are not as great, that are really, really lacking. So your project needs to have a focus there. This means when you are submitting your application, it must be able to have a component that speaks directly to this, because this is what the fund wants to achieve. So do not be silent around the space. As you are strategizing around your project, be very vocal around the space, be very strategic around the space. How will your project create employment creation? It could be individual art practitioners. It could be registered arts organizations. It could be community centers, venues in the arts and creative space, especially those that are focused in the disciplines of craft, dance, literature, multidiscipline, music, musical theater, visual arts. Those people that fall within those categories can actually be able to apply for this fund. This fund actually encourages applications for people coming from different like sectors within the art space, right? Different types of art, like for an example, let me make a couple of examples here. Creation, the component of creation, like you are creating, you can apply. Composition, workshops, you can apply. Showcases, exhibitions, script writing, residences, performances, and other art-related initiatives. If you are doing something that relates to what I have just mentioned now, this fund is for you. Also, I do not want to forget indigenous art forms. Guys, even if you are in the indigenous art form space, make sure that you take this opportunity and make use of it as well. Now, let us look into the funding thresholds so that you have an understanding of how much you can be able to apply for within which category of the threshold, right? The first one that I'm going to talk about is category 1 is major art projects. Like those, the big ones. They will get funding of up to 800,000 Rand, but at the same time, they are required, the projects that are going to be executed in the first category need to actually make sure that they provide a minimum of 80 jobs. So as you are presenting your proposal and you are submitting your application, if you go for the category of major art programs or initiatives, then you need to ensure that you are creating about 80 job opportunities. This includes everyone that's going to be participating in the projects, the artists, everyone, literally everyone that's going to be participating in the project. The second category for the thresholds is called venues. So this is where you're applying as a venue that is focused on providing support in the arts or the creative space. This one will get an allocation of up to 500,000 Rand in funding, right? And this one also has a requirement that you need to have a minimum of 50 people employed. That includes everyone. Like the project you're going to execute is going to ensure employment of up to 50 people in total, including everyone participating in the project. The third category is called other projects, and this one is going to get an allocation of up to 300,000. And here the basis is going to obviously rest on the panel, the basis for decision as to the merit of the project. So basically each project is going to be assessed individually and will be given merit, and out of that, a decision will be made to say, okay, this project should receive this amount of money and the impact of this project is X, and they are saying that this one needs to focus a lot around vulnerable groups and also around youth. Now, a very important thing that I need to mention, if your application is based on a category that I've mentioned just now, but it exceeds the maximum allocation, it will not be considered. For an example, if you say you're doing like a major arts project, right? And that is category 1, which is getting up to a maximum of 800,000, and when your application is 810,000, it will not be considered. So make sure that you fall on the threshold. Do not be above the maximum allocation per category for each of these projects. Now, as I said earlier, applications need to have been submitted by Friday, the 21st of June, 23:59. They've even given the time so that there's no debate. Oh, what about 10 or 23:59? If your application is not inside, the National Arts Council is not submitted, consider your application unsuccessful. The application process is entirely done online. Go to the National Arts Council, their website, and when you get to their website, you are going to open this fund, register yourself, open the application, complete the application, and make sure that once you've done and submitted all the attachments that are required, you actually press submit. They have also said that for applications that are unsuccessful, they are going to be receiving letters, the regret letter. They're going to be receiving those, and these will be issued out before the final outcomes, like processing of outcomes and communication of the final outcomes of successful applications. Now, there are guidelines to this funding, ne? And I always say this, funders are going to create guidelines that accompany a funding call, right? And this is to make sure that you actually understand the most important areas within each and every funding call that is put out by these different institutions. And this is mostly done, actually even the private sector does this, where they will issue out guidelines. Your guidelines or the guidelines of a funding that you are planning to apply for are very important. As you are reading the call, as you are reading the conditions on the call, and as you are responding to the call, make sure that you read it together with the guidelines. Read the guidelines. They're going to explain a lot of things that you might not understand. So on the website of the National Arts Council, they have put out the guidelines there. Read them. I would even advise that even before you proceed with submitting the application and working on the application, you first read the guidelines. Okay, let's talk about eligibility a little bit more. And I'm deriving this from the guidelines. I'm not going to be going through the entire document. You can find it for yourself, but I just want to mention a few things that are very much important that you need to keep in mind. Number one, you can apply to this fund if you're an individual, and you can apply to this fund if you're a registered organization. In cases where, let's say you are a group, you are not registered, you are all individuals, you need to select one person that is going to lead the application process. Applications must be from South Africans who are at least 18 years of age. If you're under 18, you cannot apply. They also allow that projects be implemented within the country, South Africa, like anyway, within nationally, and also abroad. They do allow that. So maybe you can say that the project is going to need you or require you to go outside the country as part of implementing the project. They also allow that. Now, another one that I want to clear is that if you work for government or a government department, you cannot apply. But if you are within like the EPWP program or CWP program or a learnership or something like that, you can apply. If you work for government and you're employed at a full-time basis, you cannot apply. But if you are part of projects such as EPWP, CWPs, apprenticeships, internships, things like that, you can still apply. Another important thing that they mention in their guidelines is that because in South Africa, 2024 marks 30 years since democracy, they want also projects around the space. So if you can be creative, consider the space and come up with like concepts and projects that you can roll out around the space. They will actually receive a lot of attention. Now, I want to mention some areas that they focus on, but this is not limited to this. Guys, if you are a creative and if you are in the arts, culture, heritage, space, craft, like this is your chance, this is your opportunity, right? Do not sleep on it. I'm going to mention some areas just to open your mind. Maybe if you're feeling like, oh, Tandy, I have no idea what you're talking about, am I eligible or not? I'm going to mention some areas that will help you to think that are allowed and eligible to apply on this fund, right? Animation and multimedia design, art teaching at community level, arts and culture related publications, capacity building and skills development projects, community outreach arts projects, creation of new works and products like wood, ceramics, pottery, things like that, creative writing, dance, performances and production, exhibitions, fashion designs with cultural elements, festivals, music concerts, musical, public art, musical theater production, publishing subsidies, storytelling, theater production. Guys, obviously, if I were to mention all of these things, this video would be an hour long, and we do not want that. So I'm just giving you ideas of who can actually make use of this opportunity. And the last part that I'm going to talk about on this video before it gets too long is what the assessment, the assessment criteria, or what the submissions or the applications are actually assessed based on, right? I'm going to mention them. I think there are about 5 areas. The first one is artistic merit and innovation. So here we're also looking at things like economic spin-offs. How does it help to improve the sector or the space that you are in? How does your project, once funded, how will it help with, ensuring that there are economic spin-offs and there's development and there's growth and there's newness and there's innovation within the sector within the space that you are functioning in? a focus on how the project is going to improve the space or the sector, especially with relations to like indigenous, ostracized groups, categories that are not focused on, disadvantaged groups and areas, ignored spaces, especially in terms of creating employment opportunities for those kinds of groups. Number 3, job creation opportunities for women, youth, people with disabilities, and people that are vulnerable groups that have been excluded before. So job opportunities. And they're saying that they also look at job opportunities within the sector that can also, expand towards opportunities outside the sector itself. Sector experience is also going to be considered. And the last one is a sound and feasible budget and plan, and like showing that you can actually execute the project. Like your project activity plan needs to be on point. And this is where we fumble it. The panels know how much things cost. You can't say bread is going to be 4 rand. I'm just making a silly example, whereas we all know that bread is 20 rand. So you need to be realistic, and your budget and your numbers and your plan and your schedule and your Gantt charts, like how long it's going to take, and the realistic elements need to be so highlighted, and they need to be so emphasized, so that your submission or your funding application is actually considered. Good people, there is a lot that I could cover on this. The one thing that I would advise you to do roundabout now is to go to the National Arts Council, go to their website, find PESP5 funding call, read the guidelines, read the application process, understand what is required from you, prepare the documentation, register, apply online, ensure that you attach everything that is required, so that you are, you set yourself up for advantage, so that your probability, the probability of you getting the fund gets to be much higher. Otherwise, that is all for me for today. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for joining us once again. I truly appreciate your continued support. And if you are new to our channel, please consider subscribing and switching on the notification bell so that you are kept abreast of when we put out new content. Otherwise, don't forget to also go and watch that video on funding readiness, because it will really, really help you to understand what it is that you need to prepare for all. Or it's a general benchmark for any fund that you want to apply for. And I always advise that be ready ahead of time. Be ready ahead of time. So when calls come out, you are not starting from scratch to prepare everything. Otherwise, thank you so much for being with me, for tuning in. I truly appreciate it. And this is all from me for today. Until next time, stay absolutely blessed.